So today's webinar is on the version 9 physical inventory. I would ask that if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. I'd rather answer your question while it's fresh in your mind than hope that you remember what your question was at the end of the webinar. And I will try to keep an eye on your hands being raised for questions. So I'm just going to kind of move this out of the way. Okay, so one of the first things that we recommend that you do prior to your physical inventory is make a good backup of your data. We hope that everything goes according to plan, but we want to plan for the worst case scenario. So making sure that you have a good backup the morning of your physical inventory or right before you do your physical inventory is always a good idea. We also recommend that you print out an on-hand report. Whatever on-hand report you prefer, those are in your report area. So let me just minimize this for a moment and open up reports. So there are quite a few on-hand reports in the custom area. I knew I mistyped it. Okay. So there are quite a few on-hand reports in the custom area. Okay, so you can see any of these that say on-hand. These are going to include sales, but there's also, you have on-hands from here down to here. Depending on which one you use, will give you the greater level of detail. Now, if you want to see every single item that is in your inventory on this on-hand report, then use the department item store report. Now, there are also on-hand reports and summaries. So you can run a on-hand report by, on-hand summary here, or if you have multiple subsidiaries, this one. There's also a few here in the merchandise area by item and by style. So we do recommend that you run that ahead of time. The day of your physical is always the best. I'm going to go ahead and close this real quick, bring that back up. The day of your physical is always the best, or after you've closed. Now, we do recommend that if at all possible, you do your physical inventory when you can close the store. Now, for some of you, that may not be until after 9 o'clock at night when the mall closes. Unfortunately, that means an all-nighter. For those of you that are standalone stores and can kind of dictate your hours, maybe it's on a day that you're already closed, like Sunday. Or you may end up doing it after closing hours anyway. The whole idea of doing a physical inventory is to get the most accurate count that you possibly can. And if you're open for business while you're doing your physical, we have found that you don't get as accurate of a count if you're open for business for a few different reasons. Your attention is divided. Your instinct is to take care of the customers, but you're knee-deep in items and counting them, and so your attention is divided. The other reason is customers notoriously will pick up an item from one section of the store, carry it around with them, and then see something else they like better, and just lay down the first item wherever they happen to see the second item. So unfortunately, if you've counted one of those sections but not the other section, things can get double counted or they can get missed altogether. So again, if at all possible, we do recommend that you close your store. Now, we also recommend that you draw a zone, what we call a zone map, a scaled down version of your store, including the back room area. If you carry stock in the back room, you need to make sure that you include that in your map. And what we're looking to do with the map is to break down your store into smaller cross sections. I usually try to keep them as common sense as I possibly can. So if I have a rounder rack, then that rounder rack will be one zone. If I have a table with sweaters on it, maybe some things underneath it, that table and all of its contents on top and below it are part of the same zone. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Circles, squares, rectangles, triangles, whatever works for you. And on that map, after you've drawn out every portion of your store, you're going to want to assign a zone name to each one of those sections. It can be alpha, it can be numeric, it can have symbols. There is not a limit on the length of that, so if you wanted to make one whole wall, you know, A1, then A2, then A3, then A4, you could do that. If you wanted to start with 1 and just keep adding to the numbers, you could do that. So it really is up to you how you label your map. But we do recommend that you do have a map before you start. Now, the day of the physical, you want to take that same map, and I usually use neon color Post-its because they're nice and easy to see no matter where I'm at in the store. What we recommend is that you take that zone map and you put a Post-it on each section with the section name on it, the zone name on it. So A1 has a sticker that says A1. A2 section has a sticker that says A2, and so forth. When they are done scanning that section and they bring the scanner back to you to download into the computer, train your staff to bring you that sticker so you know to cross it off on your map. Okay? So that way you can send them out, you can show them on the map, I need you to go to section A5, and you can show them on the map where A5 is. When they get over to that portion of the store, it will be easy for them to find what section you want them to have because of that little sticker that points to A5. So that's all prepping for the PI. You can also, some other good prep is to go through and make sure that everything has a tag. Make sure that those tags are easily visible. So if you tend to tuck your tags up into the sleeve of garments or they're, you know, that type of thing, pull them out of the sleeve. You wouldn't think that that would delay things very much, but, you know, but a second here, a second there does slow things down. So have all your everything tagged and the tags easily visible. That's all prep. Now, if you are renting one of our PT scanners, which is an older model of scanner, they do take AA batteries. So we do recommend that you buy a pack of AA batteries. Each unit will take 3 batteries. So if you're renting 3 units from us, get at least 9 additional batteries. Okay? That way, if the batteries do wear down, which does happen after about 4 or 5 hours of continuous use, they will start to wear down, and there will come a point that you'll need to replace those. Okay? So one of the first things that we recommend once you have the scanners, if you're renting them from us, we do rent a few different varieties, and I will try to go over each variety with you today. Okay, just want to make sure I was recording. I got caught the other day. I thought I was recording, didn't find out until the very end that I wasn't, so I thought I'd double check. So those different scanners that we rent, I will go over the different variations with you on that. Now, some of you have chosen to buy your own scanners, and more power to you. If you own your own scanners, that lends you the availability to do a physical inventory or a cycle count anytime that you feel you need to. So instead of just doing it once a year, a lot of people that own their own scanner choose to do it 3 or 4 times a year, either quarterly or, you know, every 4 months. I have some customers that do it every month. Now, a cycle count is where you take a particular section of your store that you seem to always have discrepancies with. Jewelry is always one of those sections that always seems to be wrong. Small ticket items tend to be wrong too. So you may decide, you know, if you own your own scanner, that you want to do just a spot check on a particular type of merchandise, or you may want to do a cycle count on a particular vendor. You just want to do a quick count on that vendor and make sure that all of your quantities are accurate. Now, like I'd mentioned, we do rent a few different devices. Most of them are a Palm-based software. We do have some that are the older scanner type of unit called the PT. Now, the PT, just because it's older, does not mean that it is not a good scanner. In fact, for me, it's a comfort level because that's the scanner I learned on. So I feel the most comfortable with that one. although it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, it does still do what we need it to do, and that is to scan the item and give us a place to put in the quantity. So all of the scanners will do that. The Palm scanners are a Palm-based software, so it actually shows you on the screen, like in a grid, all of the items that you have scanned. So it's easy to go back and double check to see if you scanned something or not. If you own your own, the ones that we sell now actually allow you to upload your inventory from your Retail Pro up into the scanner. And so when you scan an item, if it would normally come back as a scanning error, the new units that we sell actually will give you a different sounding beep, and you know almost immediately that you've hit a bad item. Whereas with the other scanners that we rent, you don't necessarily have that capability. But we will talk about how to deal with errors. Okay? The first thing that I always recommend is, as soon as you get your scanners, plug them in and get them tested. You want to make sure that the scanner and the computer are going to communicate with each other. If that doesn't happen, then you're kind of stuck right there at the beginning. So you want to make sure that this doesn't happen at 2 o'clock in the morning when there is no tech support available or only after-hours support available. So I would recommend that you test your scanners during the day. If you want some help with that, you can call into tech support and they will be more than happy to help you. Or if you have an appointment scheduled with a trainer to review what we're going over today, then have the trainer help you test that. Now, the first thing that you need to do, no matter what type of unit that you're going to be using, is you need to go into Options and Workstation Preferences. Now, once you're in Workstation Preferences, you're going to click on the plus next to Peripherals, and then you're going to highlight the Inventory Scanner, almost down here at the bottom. Once you're on the screen, you're going to choose the appropriate type. Palm would be for the Palm-based units that we rent. Portable Data Terminal would be for that PT unit I was referring to. If you use your own, if you have a Dolphin scanner, which is the scanner we sell now, you would set it for Palm in here, but the setup on that is a little different. In fact, we actually install the software on your computer. So it works just a little bit different. So I'm going to choose the Portable Data Terminal, and I'm going to go to the Configure option. Now with the Portable Terminal, my download cable, one end plugs into the bottom of the scanner, the other end plugs into the computer. Now, if you plug it in about halfway down the computer, more than likely it's COM1. If you plug it in all the way down at the bottom of the computer, more than likely it's COM3, or COM2, I'm sorry. Now, that is not exclusively the case. There are times that a COM1 and COM2 will both be down at the bottom, but you can test it multiple ways until you get a good download. I don't actually have a scanner hooked up to my computer today, but if I did, it would probably be in COM1. So I'm going to click OK. Now, even though there is a test button here, this is not how I actually want you to test it. If you are using the Palm software and you go to the Configure, you want to set it for basic, okay? And you can also set how long before you want it to time out. So how long do you want to allow this scanner to be idle before it times out and powers down? So that's what this is right here, okay? Now, once you've made those settings, you're going to click on the Update button. And what I usually do is I take the scanner and I get it into the proper scanning mode. For those of you that end up with the PT, you always want to make sure you're on the Enter Data screen when you get ready to start scanning. So on the PT scanner, on the screen of that scanner, you usually have 4 function options available to you, an F1, F2, F3, and F4. F1, Enter Data, is always the one that you want to press to get into the screen to start scanning. If you are on a Palm unit, you want to get into the Smart Scan software and that will take you directly into the screen you need to be on to start scanning. So to test it, you're going to scan a couple of your regular barcodes, just whatever random barcode you want to test that you know is in your inventory. Okay? Now, once you have scanned those items, I usually go into a receipt. Okay, I go into a new one. And if you do not already have it, add to the side button the update, I believe it is the upload items. Okay? Now, to me, that seemed kind of reverse. I thought I should be downloading items, but in reality, you do want to use the upload items. So with the PT unit, you've scanned a couple of items. Bring the scanner back over to the computer. One end is already plugged into the computer, and I usually recommend that you take that download cable and kind of drape it over the top of the computer so you don't have to reach back behind every time. Take the open end of that cable and plug it into the bottom of the PT unit. Now you're connecting the scanner with the computer, and what you're going to do is you're going to click on this upload items right here, and it's going to say prepare device. You're going to click OK, and you're going to go through a series of prompts, F4 to escape, F2 to start the send, and then F1 to send data. Okay, and when that happens, it will actually download those items into your receipt here. And of course, I've locked up my Retail Pro for pretending to do it. So bear with me real quick. Okay, gotta crash this. There we go. See, it takes just as long for ours to start up as it does for yours. Okay, so you're in the new receipt, you go through the downloading process, those items should show up on your receipt. It should just download all of them. If it does that, you know that you have good communication between the computer and the scanner. Now for the Palm units, what you're going to do is, with that Palm unit, there comes a cradle, and that cradle is attached to the computer. That's the equivalent of the download cable. So once you've scanned your items, you're going to take that Palm unit and put it down securely in that cradle. I always tell people you should feel a good solid click when you put it in. And what you're going to do, on the front of that cradle, there's going to be a hot sync button. You're going to it's a little round circle with a blue, almost like a yin and yang symbol, but it's blue and red. You're going to press that button, and that's going to start the download process. If we also have what we call a Palm symbol on those cradles, it's actually a rectangular bar with arrows going in either direction. You're going to press that button. Regardless of whatever type of Palm unit you're using, the download button will be on the cradle, and it should be the only button on that cradle. Okay? And you will also use the upload items. I want to lock up my system again. So you would use the upload items, and then once it tells you to prepare the device, click OK, and then press the hot sync button, and all of the items should download. Now, if you do not get a good download, if the items do not drop in there, then it's time to go back, especially with the PT, and try a different COM port. Okay? Try all 4 of them if you have to, but you should get a good download with one of them. Okay? So that really needs to be done ahead of starting the physical. And a lot of times, your rentals don't show up until the day of your physical, so sometimes you're testing it right before you're ready to use it. But we do want you to give it a test. We want to know that they're communicating. Okay? Any questions about the prep for physical inventory. Okay? Okay, so let's talk about the actual physical inventory. Now, the day of the physical is now here. We've gathered all of our staff members. Everyone's so excited to be pulling an all-nighter and getting to stay up late and count the physical inventory, because everybody loves physical inventory time, right? So what I do recommend is give your staff a quick tutorial in how the scanner works. The PT gives you the ability to find an item to see if you've already scanned it, to add quantity, or to delete an item. If you would like more information on that, we usually send along a cheat sheet with the rentals. With the Palm units, fortunately, you are able to do all of those same things, but your buttons that you need for that are all right there on the screen. So there'll be a quantity screen, there'll be a delete button. So if you need to delete something, you can. If you want to find an item, you can scroll up and down the list that you see on the screen. So get the staff familiar with those scanners, at least enough to where they can scan, and if they get stuck, they can bring it back to you. Okay? Now, once the staff has been briefed, you're going to send each group out to their zone. Now, we do usually recommend, if at all possible, that you have groups of 2, one person to do the scanning, the other person to turn tags, flip items over, and put the zone back in place after you're done with it. Because when you're turning stuff and flipping stuff and, you know, pulling tags out of sleeves, the section tends to get a little messy by the time they're done. So one person to scan, the other person to make those tags easy to get to. Now, if you can't do that, you can do each zone with one person. It's not a problem. You just have to get a little creative with the use of your hands, holding the scanner in one hand, turning tags with the other type of thing. Okay? Now, for the person, there should be at least one person that is manning the computer. And that's probably going to be one of you on the phone, because you're all either the system operator or store manager. Typically, I find the ones attending the webinar are in a position of authority. So what you're going to do when everybody goes out and they start scanning their sections, you're going to go into the inventory, just like you normally would if you're going to look up an item. And on the side menu, you will notice that there is a physical inventory button on the side. You're going to click on physical inventory. Let me make sure my settings are correct before I do this. So I'm going to go in to the physical inventory options and make sure, which I'm glad I looked. I want to make sure this is set up to use zones, and I also want to make sure it's going to read my ALU. Now, if you're primarily using UPCs, set this to local UPC. If your UPCs are half and half, probably use ALU first. It will look for both of them and scan both of them. It's just which one is it going to look to match to first. Okay? So the other setting that I would recommend that you turn on in here is this allow PI to reactivate inactive inventory items on PI update. So let's say that you had an item that you thought you were out of, there was no more quantity of, so you cleaned house on it and inactivated it. Now it's time to do your physical inventory, and you're back in the back room counting, and you find this item on the top shelf pushed towards the back where nobody can see it, collecting dust, getting older by the day. Well, we want to count that because you do own it, but now that item is an inactive item, and so the system will reactivate it when it updates the process, because now we need that item to be active in order to sell it once we clean it up. Okay, so I'm going to go back into my inventory, back into physical inventory, and I am going to go to stores. Now, stores is how you're going to start your physical. It's also how you're going to wrap up your physical. So I'm going to click on stores, and the first thing that it's going to ask me is what name are we giving this physical? Now, most typically, what I see for the name is the date. It might include the store as well, okay? It can be any name you want to give it, okay? So I'm going to call it webinar. Down below, you're going to check off whichever store you are counting. If you are at a main headquarters location, you have the ability to do a physical for any store. If you are at a remote location, not the headquarters, it should only show your store here, and it should already be pre-checked. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create this. Now, it will bring up a filter, and if you do not have anything in this filter to start with, right-click and go to Filter Design and add in the most commonly used fields that you would filter by. And what you filter by in inventory is a good indication of what you'll filter by here. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and right-click again, go back into Criteria. I now have my variety of fields that I just put in there. This is only going to be used, though, if you are doing a cycle count. You're just doing a spot check of a particular department or particular vendor, maybe even a particular style, okay? If you were counting the entire store, you're going to leave this completely blank. If this Clear All button has color on it, that means something is on this filter. Even if you don't notice it, something like that, you don't notice that anything's there, but you notice that the Clear All button has color on it. Click on the Clear All button to make sure that you are working with a clean slate. Then click OK. And what's happening right now is the system went through and it took a snapshot of where my quantities were as of this moment. At 2:27 in the afternoon, this is where my quantities were. Okay, and the reason that I call it a snapshot is think of it like an old-fashioned photograph. With older photographs before we had digital photography, if you took a picture and someone's eyes were closed or their hair was all messed up or they were making a weird face, well, that's just kind of what you were stuck with. What was there at the time of taking the picture is what you were stuck with. Okay? Now, since digital photography, we can turn any photo into a glamour shot, but when it takes a snapshot of your inventory, if there is an item that has not been entered into your inventory, you cannot add it after the fact and have it be part of that physical inventory. So if you come across items that are brand new, but they are not in the computer yet and they need to be entered, set those items aside, enter them in after you're all done with your physical inventory. Okay? Now, once you have started your store, you're now ready to go into the PI zones, which you'll notice on the side menu. So you're sitting on this screen waiting for the first scanner to come back to you to download. As soon as they come back to download, you're going to click on you're going to plug in the scanner cable if it's a PT, put it in the cradle if it's a palm unit, and you're going to click on the new button. You are going to have to choose your store each and every time, even if you're a remote location. It wants you to verify that is in fact the store that you want this to go into, and you're going to enter in the zone name. So whatever little piece of paper they brought back to you, that's what you're going to enter into the zone name. Now, if you want to use the notes, you most certainly can. Okay, this could be who scanned the section. This could be what type of items were in that section. It could be anything that you might want it to be. And if you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it. Okay? For those of you that use sublocations, this is also where you would want to assign your sublocation. Okay? Once all of this has been filled in, you're going to click on the Create button, and it is going to create a zone for you. Now, you'll notice at this point, there's no, rearrange these just a little bit. There we go. So you'll see that everything is 0 in here right now. Good scans, bad scans, good counts, bad counts, they're all 0. Now, the difference between the two of these, good scans or scans is different unique ALUs or different unique UPCs. How many of those did you scan? The counts is just like what it sounds like. How many did you count of each of those individual SKUs? So these numbers very easily could be the same, but it's more common to see a higher number in the counts column than it is in the scans column. Okay? So once you have the zone started, you're going to go over here to this scan button. Okay? And then you're going to either click on Add Counts or the New button. Personally, I tend to use the Add Counts button because I just was right here on this side screen, so it's a shorter keystroke to get there, but they will both give you the same exact screen. So I click on Add Counts. Now, if you were using a scanner, whether it be a Palm or a PT, you're going to click on the Portable Device tab, okay? And then it's going to wait for you to send the rest of the data. Like I said, I do not have a scanner hooked up, so I think I just locked myself up again. Normally it would let me close this. Oh, okay. One more time. I apologize. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go back into inventory and back into the physical, and you'll see that I didn't lose anything along the way. So if your physical takes longer than a single day, you can, as long as you're saving what you're doing, you can go home at a reasonable hour in the evening, come back and start fresh the next day. Okay, so my zone's still in there. I'm going to go to Scanned and Add Counts. Now I'm going to stay on the Manual Entry tab because I don't have a scanner hooked up. But if you had one hooked up, you'd go to the portable device and you would go through the proper downloading steps, just like you did when you did the test download, only now it's real. Okay? Now, what I'm about to do with the manual, though, you may end up doing with some of your things maybe around the cash wrap or when you're fixing errors, the manual entry does get used. Now, I can type in a lookup field, and it immediately puts in a quantity of 1. Now, I'm going to clean up my screen a little bit. So I want to see that ALU that I put in. Okay, and I don't have any UPC, so I'm going to get rid of that. So that way I can see the number I typed in and the quantity. Now, if you want to have the ability to change the quantity and not have it default to 1, change this radius button right here to say quantity for current item. Then it will let you type in the SKU and press enter, and it stops you in the quantity field so you can type in a quantity. Okay? Now, once you've downloaded your scanner or you've manually entered in the items, go ahead and hit close. And so it will show you the 2 items that you just downloaded, or the items that you just downloaded, whether it be 2, whether it be 200. Okay? Now, generally with the scanners, we recommend that you don't scan any more than 200 items or an hour of scanning, whichever happens to come first. Okay? The last thing that you want to do is scan so much and have that scanner get locked up or freeze on you where you have to reset it and you're going to lose everything that you have. You don't want to have to start over. You also will find that the smaller your section, the easier it is to find your errors. So because there will sometimes be scanning errors. Now in this case, I had no errors, so I'm going to go ahead and back out of this screen, and it puts me back on my zone list. You can now see that I had 2 good scans, so those are my different items, and I had 4 counts of those 2 items. Okay, no bad scans though. Now, if you download and it says that there were some problems that it found, it could not find certain items, go ahead and close your zone window anyway, and then once you come back to this screen, you'll see that it says bad scans and bad counts. You're going to go to the errors button over here on the side. Now, unfortunately, without a scanner, I can't manually force an error in there. So the best I can do is show you what you could expect if you had errors. Now, most of you, if not all of you, should have the resolve button in here. If you don't, make sure that you add it. This is an important button to have in here. So what's going to happen, the items that you scan that came back as errors are items that RetailPro did not recognize the barcode you scanned in. So let's say that you scanned in a UPC code, but for that particular item, no UPC code was ever entered into RetailPro. So when you scan the UPC code, it does not recognize that item as matching anything in your inventory because that number is not anywhere in your inventory. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, doesn't mean that it's not a line item, it's just the barcode that you read hasn't been put in for that item. So you will see the item that you scanned and it will be almost entirely blank. I'm going to add in a couple of fields here. Okay. Now the import ID, this is going to have an entry, and the scan quantity will have an entry. Everything else is going to be blank. Okay. So the import ID is the number that was actually scanned and read into the scanner, and that's what it doesn't recognize. So when there is an error, you need to tell the team that scanned that section that you need them to go back out to that section and find the item that they scanned between this item and this item. Now what you're going to see on the screen here, you'll have a blank item, but you're going to have an item with full description, size, attribute, all of that information will show up for another item on here. This scan position, this column right here, if you sort by that, this will show you the order that the items were scanned in. Okay? You can also turn it in reverse. Okay? So you'll be able to see if the item that you have the definition for was before the bad item scanned or whether it was after the bad item was scanned. So let's say that it was scanned right after the good one. So you're going to say, I need you to go and find the item that you scanned right after such and such an item and bring it back to me. So they go back to their zone, they search and they search, they find the item. Sometimes it happens quick, sometimes not so quick, but they're going to bring that back to you. And what I recommend is that you take one of your neon color Post-its and you write the quantity of that item on a Post-it and stick it on that item as best you can. Now set that item aside. We're going to deal with it a little later on. Okay? Now, once they have brought back any and all errors, because sometimes it's just one, sometimes it's more than one, when they have brought back all of the errors and you have marked all of those errors with the Post-it note and set them aside, then you're going to click on the Resolve button. I found out the hard way the first time I did a physical in version 9 that Resolve resolves all. Even though it doesn't say that, that is exactly what it does. So you only use the Resolve button once all of the error items have been found, and then this screen will go blank. Okay? If I back out, at that point, my bad scans go to 0 and my bad counts go to 0. And it's at this point that I can merge the zone. Now, some people like to merge the zone as they go. Some people wait until the very end to merge the zone. It's entirely up to you. Personally, in the older versions, I used to merge as I went because we had to save all the time. That was our way of saving. In version 9, it isn't as much saving it as it was in the older versions. So I do tend not to merge until the very end in case I want to go in and add something to a particular zone. Now, you're going to repeat that process, scan the items, download the scanner, deal with any errors that you might have, move on, okay? It is very, very critical that the person that is manning the computer and the downloading, it's critical that you clear out that scanner before you hand it back to the team and give them a new section. If you do not clear out the scanner, you will download that section a second time, and then a third time, and a fourth time, doubling, tripling, and quadrupling your quantities in the process. So it is absolutely critical that before you hand it back and turn them loose again, that you clear out any items that might be in there, okay? And so you're just going to repeat that process over and over and over again until everything is done. Now, you've handed the scanner back to the team. You send them to their new section. On your map, cross off that section that just got downloaded. That way, your map is staying up to date. Don't let it freak you out if you realize that you have not been keeping up with your map. It is easy to look around the store and look for anything that still has a post-it on it. Now, a lot of times what I will do is when they bring me the post-it note with the zone name on it, when I send them back, I will have them put a different colored neon post-it on that section so I can glance around the store and easily tell what has and hasn't been done and not have to worry, well, did the post-it just fall off or is it done? So I tend to use green or blue post-its with neon pink because they're a pretty good contrast to each other. Now, you're going to repeat that process over and over again, okay? Now, for those items that were in error, we still have to deal with those, and we just kind of put them aside for when the person manning the computer is not as busy. So let's say that everybody is out scanning and you're just sitting there at the computer waiting for somebody to come back so you can do a download. Well, while you're waiting, you can go ahead and back out of the physical inventory and go into your regular inventory, and using all of the skills that you normally would use when you're using your quick lookups or your filter view, try to locate the item that you're holding in your hand without using the UPC code or an item number. You should be able to find it with just a DCS or vendor code or description. Once you find it, write the ALU number on that post-it note, take the post-it note off the item, and start a stack of all the ones that you have found so far. Okay? If it's going to need a new tag, feel free to print a new tag at that time if you choose to. Okay? Now, what you're going to do with those post-its that you're starting a stack of is back in the physical area inventory, in the zone area, you're going to create a new zone that is specifically just errors. So I usually call it error 1 or error 2 or error 3, however many sections I ended up having. I usually put in my notes items with scanning errors, and then I go ahead and I create my zone. Now, one thing I will point out to you, you'll notice that it did not highlight my new zone. It only highlights the top one. So a way to deal with that is to sort it in reverse order by created date. Now, the most recently created one is sitting up on top. I'm then going to go into the scan button, and then from there go to add counts, but instead of going to the portable terminal, I'm going to stay on the manual entry tab, and I'm going to key in the SKU that I want. Oop, probably too many zeros. Yep. Okay. So that is one item. I'm going to change my quantity here. Okay. Okay, so those are all the items that I found the ALU, and then I still have the quantity that I wrote down when we first downloaded it. Once that's done, you can go ahead and close this window, back out, and then merge it if you're going to. Now, know that by sorting by created date, if you should exit the physical inventory tool, it will unsort just like you're used to in the rest of Retail Pro. So as soon as you leave that screen, it stops sorting by that particular field that you picked. Any questions about the downloading process or how to deal with errors? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on then. Now, when everything has been scanned, everything has been downloaded, there's not a single spot in your store or in your back room that has not been counted and accounted for. You are now ready to back out of the zone area and go back into the stores, because now we're on the updating process. We're on the finalizing our inventory. So you're going to go back to physical inventory in stores, and you're going to click on this discrepancy button. Now, this discrepancy button is going to show you all of the items where the starting quantity, when you took that snapshot, where the quantities were at that point versus what you just counted. Okay? Know that you do not have to bring all of one item together in one spot to count it because of the merging process. Maybe there's one in the display window, there's 4 on the shelf, and there's 10 in the back room. You will do those all in separate sections, and when all is said and done and they're all merged, the computer will update with a quantity of 15. Okay, so it takes all of the quantities of the same item and merges them together. Now, this discrepancy is only showing you the items where the starting quantity didn't match the actual physical count. So don't let it throw you off. If you see a particular item in here and you know that you carry it in a small, medium, and large, but you're only seeing the small, you're not seeing the medium or the large. That is not unusual. It means that there was a discrepancy with the medium and the large. Okay? So when you find an item that has a discrepancy, you need to actually go out and physically count it yourself in all the places that it might have been. You may get out there and find that you get the same exact count as everyone else did. And that's okay. That is a true discrepancy. A lot of times, though, you'll get out there and do a recount and they miss something. And so that's why they don't match. Okay? So for the items that you truly go out and you find a discrepancy on that needs to be fixed, back out of the discrepancy area and create a new zone that I typically call discrepancy. Okay, discrepancy, click OK, highlight my new zone here, and I will go in and do a manual entry of this. So I'm going to go to scan, and then add counts, and I'm going to manually enter in the items that that I've done an audit on. This time not enough zeros. There we go. So you will enter in the quantity that makes up the difference. So if your starting quantity was 10 and your discrepancy said that you only had 7, that's a discrepancy of 3. Now let's say you go back out and you start looking for that item and doing a count on it. If whatever amount the count is off, that's what you're going to enter into the quantity that you find. Okay, so if I was supposed to have 10, I only have 7, then that means I have a discrepancy of -3. Okay, so I am going to, I'm sorry, I find the 3 that I'm missing. I'm going to add in 3 to this zone. So I'm just going to, okay, I'm going to change this to be 5. And arrow down. Once all of your errors have been entered in, you're going to click on the close button. And now you're going to merge that zone just like you would any other section. So I'm going to back out. There is my discrepancy zone. I'm going to merge that zone. Okay. Now, at this point, you can you can audit as few or as many items that you would prefer to do. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is to get our cost of goods in inventory, the discrepancy between those two, to 2% or less of the total cost of the inventory. Okay? Now you will know that when you go into discrepancy, you can click on the print button and choose, you all should have a BHD set of designs in here. I do not because I just reloaded Retail Pro, but normally you would have BHD's options in here. Choose whichever one you happen to like. One's by department, one's by vendor, one is literally by SKU. Okay? So choose the one that you want, and you can get a printout, and it will show you how much shrink you have, how much discrepancies you have. Okay? And that is a net number that you'll get. So if one item is down and one item is up, then that nets out to 0. Okay? So now you are more than welcome to utilize this discrepancy report if you choose to, and it will update your quantities as well. Now make sure that error zone that you do does get merged, otherwise it will not update those numbers. Okay? Now, once you have your discrepancy at a point where you can live with it, most customers fall in the middle ground. Some customers have to find every last item that they are discrepant on and fix it to make it match what they actually physically have. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought all of a sudden. So now some people they know that their starting quantities are bad, so they know that they're going to have a ton of discrepancies. If it is your first physical inventory that you've done in version 9, then it may be that you know that your starting quantities were bad. Maybe you didn't have any starting quantities. Like my system is set up with all 5s, but normally it would be all 0s. Excuse me. Okay. Now, most people fall in the middle ground, and that middle ground being that they will try to find as many of the discrepancies as they can, but they're not going to kill themselves trying to find that discrepancy. So you'll see here's that item that I counted 2 originally, and then I said I counted 5 more. So now, because I entered in the wrong quantity, I still have a discrepancy, only now it's to the positive instead of the negative. Okay? So, again, you can make as many different discrepancy zones as you need. Okay? But when you're at a point where you're ready to say, okay, let's call it good, let's update this and get it done with. I do recommend that you do not work on your discrepancy without updating any longer than a week. A week is really pushing it. Because what's happened is you're open for business now. Once everything is merged, once all of your zones are merged, you can open your doors for business once there is a check mark next to everything. Because the numbers are locked in at that point. But the problem is, if you go to look up a discrepancy and somebody has bought it, so let's say I go to look up a discrepancy, and let's see. Okay, I'm going to create a new zone. Okay. I go to my Disk2 one, and I go to Scan and Add Accounts. So I go to Manual. I'm going to type in, okay, this quantity should be 5. I go here, change that. Okay, so I've put in those items. I close this window. I back out. I merge it. Now it has a check mark too. Now, when I go back to look at my discrepancy, I may go to count that item, and originally it was telling me that there was a discrepancy of 5. I go over to count it, I only count 4. I've searched the entire store, I can only find 4. So go ahead and enter in the quantity of 4, because a discrepancy of 1 is still better than a discrepancy of 5. Okay? So, fix whatever discrepancies you can, but don't take too long to do it, because the more you get in there and sell and customers come in and move stuff around, the harder it becomes for you, and you want to get this updated as soon as possible. So you will notice here on the side menu, there is an Update PI. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Update PI. Now, it already has the updated by to whoever is currently logged in. I'm going to come down to the reason, and I don't have any reasons in there. I'm going to actually type in physical, which most of you should have a reason of physical. I make sure I'm set for all quantities or all inventory. The reason you want all inventory over quantity only, even in a cycle count, is let's say that I have an item in the inventory that shows I have a quantity of 2. I don't have any of those at all, so I never scan it because I don't have it. So if I do quantity only, that's only going to update the items that you've scanned. And since I didn't scan this item, it won't get changed. It's still showing I have 2 in inventory, when in reality, I have 0, and it should go to 0. By choosing all inventory, if I didn't scan it, it makes the assumption that I don't have any, and it changes the quantity to 0. So that is a very important setting that you make sure is turned on, and that is a system preference. But if you don't catch the system preference, you can change it here. Then I'm going to come down to stores, and you'll notice at this point my update button is not available. It's not until I choose my store that it allows me to click on update. So I'm going to click on update. It's going to do its thing. It then disappears from my screen. It's not gone though. If I go into the physical inventory, I can go into the archive stores, and I actually see that physical inventory right here. Okay? You'll also notice if we look at my inventory, the first item, let me sort it by ALU. So my first couple of items have a quantity, then most everything else is set to 0 because I didn't count the whole thing. So because I didn't count some of these items, that's why the computer changed them to 0. Okay? Now that is the physical inventory from start to finish. If you want to continue to work on your discrepancies after you've updated, make sure you use an adjustment memo to change those quantities. And remember, with the adjustment memo, in the new quantity field, you're adding in what the quantity should be. Not how many you're adding, not how many you're taking away, but how many should it be. So if I come down here, I go, okay, it shows my original quantity is 0. I want to adjust that to 5. Okay? So the adjusted quantity is always what you should see in the inventory when all is said and done. Okay? And then obviously you can update this, and we're good there. Okay? Any questions about anything that I've covered today? Anything at all? Okay. Any questions not related to physical inventory? As long as you've got me on the phone, might as well ask any question you might have. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so when you do the discrepancy report, well, when we do the discrepancy report, yes, absolutely. The discrepancy report, the BHD ones, I don't have those loaded in my system right now. Let me grab them real quick. I know where they're at, so Um, okay, so let me grab these files right here. If you do not have these same files, let me know, and I will make sure to email them to you. Drop them into my Retail Pro. Okay, so now if I bring up my Retail Pro again, and I go into inventory, okay, so Jessica, I will make sure that I email that to you. I do have your email address from when you signed up. Okay. So if my system gets in my way, if I go into the physical inventory, and I'm just going to go into the archive because I've already updated it, but I can go into my discrepancy. I come here to print. You should have all of these that say BHD. So there's a count sheet in there. This one's by department. This is not grouped at all. It's in order by ALU. This one's by vendor. So it just really depends on which one you want. And I believe that all of them have description 2 in there. So you'll see there is description 2 on all of those documents. So, okay. The nice thing with the BHD ones is at the top of every page, you can see your starting cost, what you physically counted in cost, and the discrepancy. Same with retail, same with quantity. Ultimately, you're trying to get your discrepancy at cost to less than 2%. 2% is about average in retail. Anything below that is a good physical. Anything over that, we need to try to track down some more discrepancies. Okay, so that's kind of a good rule of thumb. Okay, great question. So anyone else have it? Okay, question 2. If there is a UPC on the item, so all that's really happening here, if I exported this out and this one item had a UPC, well, can't put it in there now, but if it had a UPC, then the UPC would show up. But what we would need to do is if the ALU is not part of those printouts that you get or the things that you export are document designs, and so the document designs can be customized for whatever needs you might have. So you just need to book maybe about a half an hour with a trainer, and we can tweak them however you want to have them tweaked. Okay, good question though. Thank you. Anyone else? No problem at all. Thank you. Okay then. Well, if no one else has any questions, I will let all of you get back to work. I want to thank you again for joining me today. I know you guys are busy and it's not always easy to stop for an hour or two and sit in on a group training, but I do appreciate all of you taking the time today. And like I said, you will be receiving an email with the link to today's recorded webinar that you are more than welcome to share with as many people as you'd like. And again, thank you so much and hope to see you on another webinar. Bye-bye.